this is Crimson Blades, and before I start the video I'm going to preface things by saying that I reached out to the developers of the Gloomhaven digital game to get some ideas on what they think might make an interesting and unique video. And what you're seeing right now is their response. Looking at this, I wanted to be able to synthesize a couple of them, and what we're going to be going for are summoners. People that are going to be able to summon minions onto the field and be able to control them or use them efficiently. Summoners and summoning has gotten a bit of a bad rep in Gloomhaven, and justifiably. They are difficult to manage, they often result in card burning, and I wanted to offer you a different style at looking at the game. And maybe you'll learn a thing or two that you're not familiar with, or it might spark some interest in veterans to try out different styles of playing these characters. Now I will say that there will be some spoilers for two classes that I will be using for this playthrough, and that is the Circles class and the Angry Face class. So it's a heads up in case you want to avoid any spoilers for any of these classes' cards. Now moving forward, let's get to it. So the two characters that we will be playing with are the Summoner and the Doomstalker. So starting off, I wanted to just make this introduction video to tell you a little bit about how I decide on picking cards that would be suitable for the Summoner and Doomstalker. The items right now are fairly early game, there's nothing that's truly game changing per se, but as we are playing through, some of them may come in effect. So let's start off with the Summoner. So looking at their cards, the Summoner does have a lot of summons right off the bat. So level 1, it's already having, I believe, 6 summons. So you got the Iron Beast, Thorn Shooter, Shadow Wolves, Lava Golem, which we'll get to a little bit later, Giant Bat, and Volatile Flames, the Living Bomb. Knowing that fact, the big thing about summons is when you play them, they are active units on the field. They are going to act according to what their actions say on their card. The catch being that these are not cards that come back to your hand. Once they are in play, they continue to be in play until the unit is killed, and they are eventually burnt because of that. Taking that into account, you don't want to be overly greedy with the number of summons that you're bringing along. So let's walk over our decisions on why we brought certain characters. The Thorn Shooter is probably the summoner's best early game summon. And the reason for this is because it's a range summon, and often range summons are one of the best summons in the game. They're able to hit units from far behind your other characters, and the range of 4, it can hit a lot of units. It's able to deal damage and poison them, and this is just a solid summon all around. The only drawback is the movement speed of 1. So often if the dungeon is much longer, it takes a long time to get from one spot to the next. But there are ways around this, such as controlling your summons or burning your summon actually and re-summoning them with a different card that we'll talk about. The next we're going with is the Living Knight. We're summoning 2 Shadow Wolves, another really strong early game summon. It summons 2 summons up front. This card is still in play until both wolves are dead. The wolves have a big move of 3, it attacks for 2, they're really good against characters with shields like fairies or living bones with their Pierce. Unending Dominance is a card we will get back to. The rest of these cards are somewhat straightforward. You may notice a trend here with me picking certain cards with lower initiatives like 25, 24, 31 and certain ones with late initiative 92, 98. And the reason for this is when a minion or a summon is about to act, it always acts 1 initiative lower than yourself. So let's say the summoner here had summoned a Thorn Shooter, and then they proceed to go at initiative 31. The Thorn Shooter would actually go right before the summoner acts. So the reason this is important is because you can summon your Thorn Shooter and then go really early the next round in order for your summon and you to take your actions before enemies get a chance to. So some of these cards, they're fairly benign actions. things like attack 2 in the top, heal in the bottom, attack 2 targets in the top, potentially wounding them, moving 3, things that are supplementary, but I find it more useful for the initiative purpose. The next 2 cards, Mighty Bond and Bonded Might. Both of these have really solid tops. They are able to allow your summons to move and attack based on their action here. So for example, if I have a summon out like this Wolves, which move 3 and attack 2 with Pierce 2. Remember they go before me, so after they act and they deal damage, I'm going to control them again, make them attack the same unit or move to another unit and attack them, and gain an experience as well. So these are her bread and butter, able to control his summons, make them very viable. Finally, Volatile Flame is an interesting choice because it's a bit of a AoE, it's a bomb essentially. You drop him, you can drop him in the middle of everyone, or you could drop him somewhat back and he runs in and starts hitting people, and when he dies, he blows up, dealing damage to every enemy around him. I avoided some of the other ones just on the basis that I found this to be a pretty solid opening choice, and as we are playing I will get further into how I use initiative to my advantage. So summoning units later in the turn, so going late intentionally to summon your units so they are not there to be attacked, and then going early the next turn in order to allow your summons to have their turns. Remember, keeping your summons alive as long as possible is crucial. The last thing before I forget is talking about Unending Dominance. This is the most important summoner card, and do not let this card get burnt. If you use this card for any reason, move to, attack to, or you threw it in your discard pile and you did a short rest, maybe a different card popped up and you have the option to take a damage and burn a different random card, do not do it because you cannot afford to lose this card. The reason is this card allows her to be viable. So let's say you played your Wild Animation, your Wolves, and you played your Bomb and they all died. All these units died in their line of duty. You can use the bottom of this card in order to bring all of those burned cards back into your hand. So this actually gives you a ton more turns. I have had people question if the Lava Golem is a bit of a meme card because nobody would truly use the top, right? Everyone will use the bottom to bring cards back. I have actually tested this out and to some pretty interesting effect. The Lava Golem can actually be played for its top. It gives you a whopping 6 XP and you are able to have a really powerful unit on the field. The catch I found, such that you don't run out of turns, is by only using the Lava Golem and probably a Wild Animation, maybe the Thorn Shooter and the Lava Golem, and that is it. Do not use any other summon because you cannot afford to burn any other cards. Instead, you can drop your Shadow Wolves, go for lower initiative cards like Ethereal Vines, move to heal 1, heal the summon then. And you want to take the attention away from your Golem as much as you can. You want him to go in, whack people, he'll deal damage, he'll cause fire, he'll wound people, he'll cause retaliation damage with the radius. Keeping him alive is key, and often this is better with a larger group because he's able to sneak in, hit people, and someone else might take the attention away. And so he's a very solid, persistently powerful unit to have in the field. The only catch is if he is dead, you are significantly weaker. So it's more of an interesting play, but we can try it out sometime as well. Now, let's move on to the Doomstalker. The Doomstalker is a little bit different because he is in general a ranged attacker, but he does have some interesting summons. And he has, I would argue, one of the strongest summons in the entire game at level 9, which is a ranged summon which can poison. But let's talk about his summons. So first things first, the Warhawk. This is one of his strongest summons, honestly. Move 3 with flying, so you can fly over obstacles, get into dangerous zones, deal 3 damage. This is very strong, especially if you can keep it alive for a few turns. He can deal a ton of damage. Battle Bow is a little bit more like a meat shield. You know, you drop him there, he can go deal 1 damage and has a lot more health. But if you're playing on higher difficulties or with a larger party, the value of the Battle Bow is not as much, so I find that it's more likely that I'm going to replace him out at some point. It's just that there's not as many summons in level 1. Moving further down, you have the Vicious Jackal. The Vicious Jackal is another interesting summon. It has a standard move of about 2. When he deals damage, it actually applies wound to its hits, which is always a nice effect to have, especially on shielded people. And whenever anyone attacks it, if it survives the damage, it can deal retaliate damage to it. These are the summons that he'll be running. For the most part, that's about all the summons he has, so the other cards will be range cards to help support summons. He also has some interesting cards such as the bottom of The Hunt Begins. All summoned allies add 2 to all the attacks targeting this enemy, which is you can wail on an enemy if it's an individual boss or so and you had multiple summons around it. Again, his items are nothing too fancy. I threw in a few things that may complement his cards, but for the most part, these are the 2 guys that we're going to be playing with. We are going to go with the difficulty of brutal and then go from there. And I'm going to start from level 1. As we're playing through, I'm going to be picking level up cards based on what I think is most ideal for certain characters, and I'll explain my thought process along the way. This is just an introduction video to the Summoner series, and I hope that you will stick around and enjoy learning about what it's like to play these characters and whether it's actually truly viable to play summons. Personally, I find the Summoner is my favorite class in Gloomhaven, which is an unpopular opinion, but I do find that when you know how to play them well, you may find some actually hilarious or clutch moments that come through because of the summons. So I hope that you guys have enjoyed this video so far. Please stay tuned for the Summoner series as it's coming out. If you have any suggestions, feedback, comments, please put it down in the comment section below. I'd love to get your opinion on the series, and I'd love to get your opinion on any further or other games that you want to see me play, because I've started playthroughs of some other games as well. Thank you so much again for joining me. Like and subscribe, and share this with anyone who loves Gloomhaven content. I hope that you learned something interesting from this playthrough. Have an awesome day, everyone. Take care.
You can count on my steel.